and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Wednesday the 18th of November 2015, and joining me on this short edition is Mark Hodgkinson.
Oh no, not again.
And audio reviewer Ed Selly.
Keep firing, assholes.
Trust you.
I wish I'd chosen that one now.
Trust you. Welcome back to the podcast. Ed, why not tell us what we can win if we're lucky?
Well, at the moment, you have a choice of, I say choice, you still have to win it, but you can enter. All members are eligible for the 60th anniversary release of The Lady Killers, which ends on the 27th of November, a fine film and infinitely superior to the remake. And you've got until the 30th of November, again open to all members, for Edward Scissorhands, which, yeah, let's face it, that's not a bad film in itself as well. I mean, obviously it's not a cut on the porn rip-off Edward Penis Hands, which is sort of dropped into...
Yeah, let's not go there. We're only like 1 minute 30 into the podcast. Let's not just go there just yet. So anyway, those astute amongst you will have realised that the guy that does most talking on these podcasts isn't here. So he's not here to defend what Sony did last week, which is basically they announced their 4K UHD Blu-ray lineup of discs to be launched in Phase 1. Mark, it's a bit lame, isn't it?
A bit, yeah, it's shockingly bad. What's the best of them? I guess, would it be Chappie? We've got Chappie, although I didn't really like that movie myself. We've got The Amazing Spider-Man 2. We've got Hancock. And then the Pierce the Resistance, we've got Smurfs 2. Oh, and Pineapple Express, which is a stoner movie, if I remember rightly. Yeah, what a load of what a load of rubbish that is. Honestly,
I think the point we're getting to here is who the hell's going to buy these? They're not just going to buy them just because of 4K. I mean, I know I've done some silly things in the past. Going out and buying films that I normally, like Transformers, I normally wouldn't buy, but have because it's got demo quality sound and picture. But I think they're pushing the arm just a little bit here with these releases. I mean, this is a hard sell of all hard sells. Never mind a new format, but there's nothing there, Ed, is there? I've
got to be honest, from someone very much on the fence on this one. I say not on the fence to the success of the format. I'm pretty sure about what's going to happen here, but there's not one of those films in any way, shape, or form would encourage me to splash out on the hardware.
The likelihood is as well, you're not talking cheap either. So these are not going to be 15 quid like Blu-rays are. No. These are going to be at least 20 quid.
Yeah, 25, 30 will be, I guess.
Which is $24.99 more than the Smurfs 2 is worth. I mean, you could live reenact Smurfs 2, and I'm not going to pay 25 quid for it.
Yeah,
it's the answer to a question that nobody asked.
It's almost an insult, isn't it, really?
Are there titles within the Sony arsenal that are inexplicably not here? I'm genuinely sort of a bit loose on...
Well, they did a few of the mastered in 4K Blu-ray releases recently, and, well, they've obviously got the 4K masters because it was mastered in it. So you're talking to stuff like The Fifth Element, which has got a big following on the forums, a lot of sci-fi fans on the forums, so a big following for that film. Again, people are likely, I think I've triple or quadruple dipped on that film over the years.
It's a bit of a visual spectacle, that one, as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
These aren't, are they, really,
no.
by and large?
And then you got, I think Dracula was redone recently, Coppola's Dracula, which has Keanu Reeves doing an English accent, which is...
mighty.
Yeah, it's just, it's cringeworthy.
Entertaining for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, totally. But again, it supposedly had a Stonking Atmos soundtrack. And this is Sony Pictures, Columbia. They've got a big arsenal of catalogue titles, as well as recent big cinema releases.
Well, we've discussed in the past that obviously there is a school of thought that says that you can't just nostalgia, so it's enthusiasts by doing what we do and double, triple dipping, etc. There has to be new release stuff. But I was when I saw the running order come through, I was just trying to work out, is there anything in Sony's recent sort of arsenal of released films that are not here? Well, I mean, just stuff that could do potentially quite well. I mean, Fury is apparently a Sony one. I mean, I'd be more inclined to buy that than any of the other ones here. American Hustle and Monuments Men, Django Unchained. I mean, that, and Skyfall. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, the big one is Spectre.
Well, yes,
you got to expect that's going to make its debut on 4K UHD Blu-ray.
And I was just talking about, obviously, this list of stuff is stuff that has already gone through at least one form of release. So I'm just reading off sort of stuff that's contemporary with that. And it's just like they've gone out of their way to just choose shite.
I think basically wrapping up on this rather quickly, it's a wasted opportunity. Wave 1, it's a lot of dross. Even Hancock is not great. It's a Will Smith, and I thought it was really poor, to be honest. Amazing Spider-Man 2. I haven't seen the Amazing Spider-Man 1 yet. I haven't looked at the reboot of that franchise because I'm sick of superhero stuff. So for me, it's really disappointing because I really want 4K UHD Blu-ray to do well because I'd like to see that format. We're now getting the display devices through to take advantage of it. So, I really hope it does do well. But on titles like this, I think we're all kind of along the same agreement here that's very lame.
It's very lame.
It's
just like the cashing in on early adopters, that and the hope that people are going to do exactly what you didn't say they weren't going to do, Phil, and that's buy them just because they're 4K.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're hoping.
That's what it looks like. At least Fox had a decent slate. So
yeah.
And this is Wave 1, so this is just what they're announcing now. We'll see at CES, I suppose, and hopefully that's going to be the big push for the format, because if it isn't pushed big at CES with actual physical machines that can be purchased within a few weeks of the show, as well as software ed, it becomes an even bigger ask then.
It's not looking good. So we've been accused in the past of talking it down. Let's see what happens at CES, but at the moment no one's doing anything that really helps themselves. It's just, it all looks terribly half-hearted.
Okay, so is ULED, what is ULED anyway? Is it better than OLED, Mark? Hisense, we've been talking them up a little bit in the last few podcasts because we have seen their products at trade shows like IFA and CES. A few years ago, they took over the massive Microsoft stand at CES, and they have exhibited there over the last few years. All their technology is the same as Samsung and LG and Panasonic and the big four, basically. Yeah. They seem to be just about to hit the UK mark with some really promising tech. I mean, promising tech insofar as when Steve put his report up from last week's launch event for the 910, the XT910 4K TV, we were expecting a bit of a mixed bag in terms of comments, and that didn't happen because we thought the enthusiast market, they might question a new Chinese brand coming into the market a little bit more, but it seems to be that a real appetite for some really good up-to-the-minute tech, but at decent, reasonable pricing.
A decent reasonable is probably understating it a little, but when you actually look at what we're getting with this, the XT910 is their flagship TV. But they've got others lower down the range that have got pretty impressive specs as well. This is the XT910 65-inch TV, retailing at around £2,000, we believe. And for that, you're getting probably the best spec sheet in the business right now. It's a 10-bit VA paddle, supports HDR10. The manufacturers are saying it goes 900 nits peak brightness for the HDR, which is far brighter than the brightest Samsung, which is about 650, I believe. HDMI 2.0, but upgraded to 2.0A with a software update when needed. It's quantum dot, obviously. It can hit, according to the manufacturer, 98% of DCI and 75% of Rec 2020. So that's better than Samsung or Sony or anyone right now in terms of colour space coverage. It's got active shutter 3D if you're interested in that. It's got 240 local dimming zones as opposed to, I think it's 150 on the JS9500, which is Samsung's flagship
and
TV.
16 on the Panasonic.
And 16 on the Panasonic. So you've got to think, well, backlight uniformity should be good. Lack of haloing on the dimming, it should be good. They've got the same, as you say, technology as Samsung. Their Peak Illuminator Pro technology, which takes it redistributes energy to the panel very efficiently. So if you've got like a space scene on a really dark scene, it can suck the energy it's not using and put it into the stars and make them brighter. A kind of faux HDR, if you like, but it also works with the HDR tech.
That's
smart peaking.
Exactly what Samsung do with theirs, isn't it? So
yeah.
It's one of these things that you start looking at. You look at the price and you think, well, where's the catch? that would be
That's
me being cynical, as listeners know I am, and sometimes I play that role just to be a devil's advocate. But where is the catch with this?
I'm not sure. Is there one? I'm not sure there's going to be one. I'm really optimistic that this is going to be an absolutely stonking 65-inch HDR TV for $2,000. And
so if you're Samsung and LG, and to a certain extent Sony and Panasonic and Philips, you're going to be
cacking our pants.
Well, it does look, doesn't it, like we've discussed in the past, that there appears to have been at least a slight effort amongst a number of the big television manufacturers to try and use the introduction of 4K to just slightly bolster the sort of margins that they're operating on. Whether I don't know enough about Hisense to know to work out, if they are making very little on it, or simply because of the scale of the operation and the strength of their domestic market, that they just have lower overheads. But this essentially completely and utterly undercuts that, whatever else has been going on. They just have different requirements and a different strategy to market. I mean, if you're a new company, I guess you have to do what it takes to get yourself established, and releasing something which is definably state of the art for less than your rivals are doing not state of the art is a pretty good way of going about it.
I mean, the problem with the UK market, and we've mentioned it a few times now, Mark, is the fact that it is saturated when it comes to TVs. I mean, we're past the whole switch to digital thing, which was a bit of a shot in the arm for a lot of manufacturers about 2 or 3 years ago. But now that that's out the way, a lot of people have flat panels in the second or third rooms now as well. So it becomes a harder and harder sell to sell a new TV in such a market.
Absolutely, it does. But as I just said, this is one way of doing it: is release something that, on the face of it, it blows the competition out of the water for a greatly reduced price. It's probably a good way to build up a bit of early momentum for sure, and create a buzz and excitement. If it reviews, like it looks, it's like it's gonna, then there's going to be all sorts of awards coming its way. And Hisense are a massive company; they're the 4th largest TV manufacturer in the world now, so they've got a lot of resource behind them. It's just a case, as you say, Phil, of building up that UK market. The relationships with retailers, or they appear to be already good, so that they're in a lot of
that's what
large retailers.
I was just going to come in and say that they've done the groundwork, haven't they? They're in John Lewis, they're in Amazon, they're in the big retailers where Curry's, PC World, and so on. So they're going to be front and centre, people going into these premises, looking at TVs. So it looks like if they can keep the positivity, they're going to build a nice little brand name for themselves. Yeah,
they're coming in high end as well, aren't they? Not high end in the pricing, but high end in terms of the product. Which
is the next big thing, isn't it? That's the exciting thing, because I guess when we previously been discussing this, Ed, and looking at where they've been positioning themselves in other marketplaces like the US, you're looking at the models at $499, so like the XT, I think it's a 321 it's called, which is like their entry level TV. That's kind of where we thought we were going to see them come into the market, but no, they've gone for the high tech approach, but undercutting, not by a huge amount, but undercutting the competition and offering the same sort of quality.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, it's a bit of a shame that Steve's not here. I mean, obviously, it's unusual sort of talking and doing things like that. But I guess, the only, from my sort of perspective, the only thing that's going to be interesting is the devil being in the details. I mean, historically, and I don't want to stereotype, I don't want to make snap judgments, but where new arrivals in almost any given market often, where problems sort of make themselves felt is interfaces, on-screen menus, remotes, control apps, things like that. I don't know exactly what additional stuff Steve was sort of shown about the screens there, but that's the sort of interesting bit for me.
That's all in place, Ed, to be honest.
Is it? Have you played about with the stuff?
No, I've not played about it. No, in terms of I've seen it. I've seen screenshots and
we've seen it at trade shows as well. So it's all in place. It's all there.
Fine.
I mean, even the smart platforms are.
It's got Netflix, YouTube, Amazon 4K. Well, Amazon 4K.
Yeah, I mean, they've done the groundwork on this. They really have. So
it's been a few years coming, hasn't it? Because was it 3 years ago we predicted it and it's probably taken a year longer than we thought it was going to happen.
Yeah,
yeah. But again,
the odd one. I mean, if they've got that right, they have avoided the main sort of pitfall. I mean, it's interesting if you look at not magazine reviews but customer feedback for people that have bought the Tesla electric cars. All of the stuff that's fundamentally unique to Tesla is extraordinarily good. The only time when they seem to run into problems is the fact that after it's all said and done, it's still an American car. So people get a bit hung up on bits of the interior and the fact it doesn't ride or stop desperately well. It's just so, I mean, that was reading Steve's piece. That was the only thing I was sort of thinking throughout. It's like, okay, so all the specification stuff is here, but just if there's any holes in the day-to-day usability, but if they've got that squared away, then bad luck everyone else, really.
There's a guy in the forums with I think it's a 710, which is obviously at least one range down, but he's more than happy with it. He's one of these guys that's returned a few TVs for various reasons, backlight bleed and all the rest of it, and he's very, very happy with it indeed for the money he's paid for it. It's obviously not this model we're discussing right now, but it's a 4K TV with all the smart features and what have you. So he's very impressed.
When it comes to the functionality and stuff, that's something we'll leave for Steve because he will be getting a review sample in the next 2 weeks. We're also expecting the 321 in at some point. A 321, I feel like Ted Rogers. Dusty bin. We should be getting that in. Was it this week, Mark, or the week after?
I'm waiting for contacts. It should be this week, I believe.
But yeah, okay. So we should be getting these TVs in pretty quickly. We'll treat them the same as every other TV that comes through because that's the way we do things. They are all tested exactly the same way on a level playing field. The same test sequences, the same measurements, all the rest of it. And we'll see how they do. But it is promising. And again, looking at this from a brand point of view, Ed, and where were LG and Samsung 10 years ago?
Well, no, absolutely. With the Hisense have the added advantage of obviously now the South Korean market is just as sophisticated as anywhere else, but there is enormous domestic requirements for what they're doing as well. Whereas all the way back, even further than 10 years, to be fair, but back in the heady days of Lucky Gold Star, there wasn't even necessarily a huge domestic base to get the successful, whereas that's not something that Hisense suffer from.
Yeah, so interesting stuff, and I'm sure we'll come back to this probably next week when Steve's back and get a little bit more in terms of the usability, and hopefully we'll have some review samples through as well, so we can start discussing just how good they are, because it looks promising on paper, but the proof is always in the pudding, isn't it, Ed? And we like our puddings.
Well, I'm not a pudding person, but I know that much proofing of puddings will take place. As I say, your reviewing process is entirely impartial. It goes into Steve's porn dungeon, and you see what comes out the other end.
Oh, I've never heard it called that before. Anyway, moving things on, Roku snagged Amazon Instant Video last week. It came as a bit of a shock, Mark, because I don't think we were expecting this, were we?
No. It wasn't. We weren't at all expecting it, given Amazon's behaviour with regards to the competition recently, i.e. banning the sales of the competing devices, then sticking it on a direct competitor to the Fire TV and Fire TV Stick is an unusual move on the face of it. But then they've had a relationship with Amazon in the States since pretty much since they started, so perhaps it's just rubbed off there. And we know from having spoken to Roku UK press office that they've been hammering Amazon since they've launched in the UK, so maybe they've just given it. But it's good news. It's great news for Roku owners. They've pretty much got the full set now.
Totally, because I was looking at the Roku 3 and thinking, I really need to go and get a Fire TV, just so I've got Amazon and that kind of thing. And whoa, lo and behold, it pops up and it's there and it works.
Solved.
Problem solved, totally. And got to say, I'm really quite enjoying the Amazon Instant Video. I've had a stick for a while, and got to say the streaming quality is better than Netflix. It is
you're getting 10 megabytes per second on the 1080p streams, and it's that's superior to the HD Netflix, which is about 7.5 meg, I believe. So yeah, it can look really, really good. Is that a segue into me? I've forgotten about watching HDR. Yeah, and I actually got a chance to see a little bit of the Ultra HD HDR Mozart in the Jungle last week with the Samsung JS8500, 65-inch I had here for review, and I'm a bit mixed feelings about that at the moment.
So if Mark, I've got really frustrated feelings about this HDR at the minute, because I can't get any of the bloody clips to work with this Sony projector I have in at the minute, because unlike the TV, which has the player built into it and has the HEVC decoding and so on, and HDR decoding built into the TV, the projector I have to use a standalone device. You sent me up the Video X6 Pro, which you reviewed a couple of weeks ago. I loaded up all the clips onto that, plugged it into the Sony projector, and the media player doesn't like them. It'll play the 4K clips, it'll play my Canada footage that I shot on a GH4 and 4K, proper 4K as well, not UHD resolution, but proper 4K resolution, and it plays it back, and it looks absolutely stunning. I'm not blowing my own trumpet there.
No, it does.
It just looks unbelievably good. But the HDR stuff, I tried, and finally I got a Sony promotional thing for Cine Alta. So that's their Pro cameras, the Pro 4K cameras. It was a clip of a Japanese mum and daughter on a boat at night, and the boat had all the interior lighting on, but you could still make out the city skyline through the windows. Quite impressive, but we can all make little demo clips like that and make things look extremely good when you're using professional equipment like that, and you're doing like a 30-second promo reel, like the OLED promo reels that the LG and Samsung do in 4K and all this. It's easy to make things look good. What you want to see is motion picture stuff, and the motion picture stuff that exists at the minute, I can't get it to play on the outboard media player. So at the moment, I can't test a display device that is in for testing. I can't test it for HDR.
It's quite frustrating, isn't it? I mean, it kind of shows you where we're at with the format at the minute, I suppose. Incompatibility with connections and players and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I guess that's all going to get better quite soon. It
has to, because at the moment, like I say, it's unusable. And you're sending me boxes that I would have to have gone out and purchased that otherwise. And if I was a consumer or a punter that paid £8,000 for this projector, I'd have to go and find these solutions and plug them in, and then find that they don't work.
I think you'd find it's only Sony's player that's going to work reliably with that projector right now, I'm guessing.
And they promised they were going to send it along with some 3D glasses, and that was 2 weeks ago.
Oh well, you got to keep it a bit longer at least, don't you?
But anyway, you get working on this Samsung TV, which will be up. The review will be up by the time this podcast goes out. So what did you make of the HDR that you actually got working on it?
Right, so for a start, I watched Mozart in the Jungle, and I watched 2 episodes of it because I couldn't really get into it, to be honest. And I'm not just going to watch something just because it's HDR, other than for work purposes. So I watched 2 episodes of that and ran it against either the Fire TV or the Roku at 1080p. One of them. I just kept switching inputs anyway and looking at various scenes throughout, and I was pretty mixed feelings about it, to be honest. I'm not sure that Mozart in the Jungle is going to be the best example of HDR. I mean, it's understandable considering it's the first, but a lot of the dark scenes are pretty washed out, and just occasionally colours look completely wrong, and it just, sometimes it looks stunning, and there are bits that you just go, wow, that looks amazing, but then it'll jump to the next scene, and it's mainly the washed out look really in the black. So I couldn't really get on with it for long enough.
Well, you see, that kind of points to either the metadata not working or the gamma curve not being correct.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I could go and try and calibrate to a different gamma curve and see if I got any more joy, but I'm not sure that I would.
And is Joe public?
Yeah, of course not. Of course not. They're just going to look at it and think, oh, that doesn't look too good at times. So mixed feelings. I need to see more. What I would say is the clips of, say, Exodus and the other one. What's the other one?
Life of Pi.
Life of Pi that Samsung have got on their demo clip look incredible, much better, much more contrasty. But it just seems like the mastering on Mozart in the Jungle isn't so good. It just doesn't look quite right all the time. Sometimes, as I say, sometimes it looks great. Other times, no. I'd rather be watching now.
That kind of points to some incompatibility somewhere. That would be my thinking, because you wouldn't deliberately put something washed out, would you? So. Yeah, it seems like there's something technically not quite right there. It might be worthwhile speaking to Amazon again and seeing.
Yeah, it would be. I think it probably is. It was just kind of no. I'm hoping for better from bigger budget movies and TV.
Yeah. So again, this kind of points to where we are at the moment, where lots of formats, lots of different.
I'm still not rushing to get shot. I am content where I mean, obviously there are any number of things competing for my slender resources, but we're at 2004 in comparatively in sort of 8 HD terms. There is stuff out there, and by that point there was stuff you actually wanted to watch out there, but it's still patchy. There's still some concerns over compatibility. It's just I don't feel at the moment I'm missing out hugely.
Yeah,
that's the basic crux of it.
I downloaded the Force Awakens Star Wars trailer thinking it was the 4K because it was labelled as the 4K version. It's not. It was 2K. But obviously the advantage of this projector is it's a native 4K projector. It upscaled it, and I've got to see on a scope screen when it was zoomed out to fill the scope screen. Oh, I can't wait. I had to get Star Wars in there somewhere. So
you did. I can't believe you've done that. Of course I can believe you've done that. What am I saying?
Oh, I just can't wait. It looked amazing on a 10-foot screen in scope. And right, so let's move on to some reviews. Ed, we haven't heard from you for a while, so we've been looking at some headphones. We actually had these in before they were launched.
We got sent the SoundMAGIC P55s ahead of their UK launch, which was very nice. I don't know. People that got in very, very early on my review, when they were sent to me, and when I had a chat with the distributor at the IFA show, the P55 was a £200 headphone. And basically, I did most of my listing and reviewing thinking this is a really well-sorted pair of £200 headphones. And then on launch day, lo and behold, they're actually 150 quid. So, yeah, they are a very, very good pair of headphones for £150. They are beautifully made. They are comfortable. They are well thought out. As I say, my only complaints are that it doesn't come with a long cord. You get two short cords, 1.2 meter cords, one with a remote and one without. So if your equipment is a long way away at home, it's not as good. You'll need an extra cord aftermarket, but it's not difficult to do. But otherwise, they are almost voiceless. And what's very interesting is that SoundMAGIC have made the very conscious decision. There's no tweaking of the frequency response to sort of either make them sound artificially more exciting or artificially smoother. They are very, very down the line, very flat, very even frequency response. So if you listen to them against a lot of the competition, just side by side, you'll think, that doesn't sound as exciting. But when you actually spend a bit of time with them, you begin to realise that this is a very, very honest, accurate, and very appealing sounding pair of headphones. The caveat to that being, for the love of God, don't listen to them until they've got lots of hours on them. I've not had an affordable product in a long time which needed as long just being run before they sounded right than these. And just heading off, I don't know if it hasn't been asked on the review. I know if people are wondering, there is undoubtedly a little element of sort of psychosomatic and psychological adjustment to the way something sounds, as well as it improving. But one of the advantages of that Chord Mojo DAC that was reviewed last month is that every time you turn it on, it goes back to exactly the same settings as it did when you last switched it off. So there were no changes to level. I pretty much went straight back to the piece of music I'd been listening to 12 hours previously after another 12 hours of running, and the difference was pretty considerable. So if you are going to buy a pair, just have the patience and the presence of mind to put a good 24, 30 hours on them, and then sit back and listen to what is a very, very good pair of headphones.
For a headphone Luddite like me who, the brands I know stop at sort of Sennheiser, Denon, or Audio-Technica, that kind of. Where does SoundMAGIC sit? Well,
they are. It's interesting having spent so much time talking about Hisense. There are some unusual parallels. They are a Chinese company. They were set up, I suppose now about 7 years ago. Back when I was still working full-time on a magazine, I got sent a pair of the E10 earphones. I was told these are a bit good. It's like, well, it's at 30 quid. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And they were absolutely brilliant. And it's there are. I mean, it's less of a high technology exercise than Hisense, but some of the same principles are there. Very, very high quality engineering, good quality materials used throughout. Very, very solid and well thought out design practice, and then delivering it at a price that most of the rivals struggle to do. As I say, the P55 is a great £200 pair of headphones, and they are going out the door for 150 quid.
If they had longer cables, I'd ask for some for my Christmas.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not completely stupid. It's just a 3.5mm socket on the headphone.
Oh, is it? Right?
So you could easily, I think a long cord on Amazon is about £4. It's just the competition, specifically thinking about Focal's Spirit One S and the Audio-Technica MSR7. They come with a short cord with a remote and then a long remoteless cord about 3 meters, which is just so much more useful for home use.
Yeah, that's what I'd need, about 3 meters.
But equally, the SoundMAGIC is all essentially, it's with the obvious exception of like the pads and the like, it's all metal. They are beautifully made and nice and subtle with it. I mean, obviously, I speaking as an increasingly old person, I guess that my requirements are different to youth, but they're just a nice grown-up looking pair of headphones. There's no luminous bits or flashing bits or desperately trying to be Beats by Dre. It's just all good.
And what are they up against at that price level then, Ed?
Well, going back, Focal's Spirit One S is an extra £10. It's 160 quid. The Focal's a bit more exciting in the way it sounds, and it's a bit lighter. If you're going to spend a lot of time out and about with them, I think the Focal might edge it there, although it's not as good a home headphone. And then for £200, you can have the Audio-Technica MSR7, which we also reviewed a bit of time ago. They are exquisitely comfortable, and they are also extremely well made. But that, if you like, is a home headphone which you can, sort of use in a nomadic sense. The SoundMAGIC's quite clever in that they have gone to the effort of ensuring that it's a very good balance between something which you can use at home and use on the move. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's more £150 to £200 headphones. Even if I devoted all of my review slots to them, we'd never get through it. But These are really quite something, quite impressive piece of kit. Okay, so
you've looked at headphones, but another product which it's always intrigued me, and we've never really had the time basically to get in for review. But I specifically asked you a couple of weeks ago, can we try and get the Zeppelin in from B&W? It's been relaunched with some new features. So, what do you think, Ed? I think design wise it looks beautiful, but beautiful things don't necessarily mean they sound nice.
Well, it's a funny one. I've always looked at it and I've just thought, it's not a great use of space. It's one of those things where it's a great piece of industrial design. I'm thinking that's taking up quite a lot of physical room, and then actually leaving you a bit sort of tight. But this latest iteration, Zeppelin Wireless, it turned up. I only actually got it out of the box this morning, I'll be completely honest with you. But they have actually, Bowers and Wilkins have been quite clever here, because it's still very recognisably a Zeppelin, but they've altered the footprint and the form factor slightly. And whilst it's still probably not the most practically shaped device out there, it's just a little bit more compact. They've some nice little tweaks and adjustments. And I've been playing about with it all morning, and there's a lot to like. I'll be getting a full review out as quickly as is practical to do. There are some parts of the spec which I'm going to have to investigate.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, again, you were talking about running in headphones. We like to run these products in.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I'm not expecting your final verdicts here, but in terms of a first look,
and there's a lot to like, and there's a review coming up for another product in this category. It's going to go live this month from Geneva, and I questioned that it was very, very capable, but there were some parts of how features have been implemented which just didn't feel that slick. By comparison, this feels like everyone involved in the design of this product worked very closely, communicated all the time, with everyone else and everything was done in-house by the same people, it does feel very cohesive, very clever, and very well worked out. And you know, given that this is a premium product with a premium price tag, that's very important. So I'm hoping that we get some hours on it, start playing about with some of the other bells and whistles, and it continues to deliver.
Excellent. So that's audio-wise. We're going to have our music roundup in a little while on the podcast, but moving to our last hardware subject of the day, we've already discussed 4K UHD Blu-ray. It's coming next year, but you had the Sony flagship Blu-ray player through, Mark. I think you looked at the S4500. I've seen the S5500, and this is the flagship, the S6500. And looking at it, I think the only difference between them is that this does 4K upscaling.
As far as I could make out, between the one you did and the one I did, sorry, this one, not the 4500, which is missing a couple of features that this one does. I think that's it. I think it's just the Ultra HD scaling, which it'll set you back an extra £65 at the minute online, which that's a big sell because
if you've got a 4K TV, I think all of them do exceptionally good upscaling.
Yeah, it's relatively easy, isn't it, to scale from 1080p to Ultra HD. Certainly with the technology that's here now, that you don't really get any scaling problems, even on the sort of the cheaper TVs. They generally look pretty sharp. So it's only £129.99, I guess. So it's not a particularly expensive item, and certainly it's not really flagship pricing. But then Blu-ray's a bit of a hard sell right now, and particularly with Ultra HD around the corner, if people are thinking of buying a new player, then they're probably going to be more inclined to wait and see the pricing on the Ultra HD players and commit to a scaling player. Yeah,
because I mean, like Blu-ray, it has to be backwards compatible. So I guess, you know, in the next 24 months, we're going to see Blu-ray players disappear and be replaced by 4K UHD players that play Blu-ray and DVD and CD, and you know, it's like it has with Blu-ray. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a DVD player on a shelf for sale. No,
that's the point. I've not gone out my way to look for
longer to die out than you'd ever give credit for, but no, we are now. That time has now passed.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So I guess the next 24 months we're going to see the same with the 4K players. That's if the 4K players take off, which I think they will. But do you need to go out and buy this player? I mean, it's only 130 quid, but at the same time, you know, can you wait 6 months? I guess is the question.
Exactly. If your machine's not broken down, and you've no real rush, and I would be more inclined just to hang on and wait and see, you know, if there's a 200 quid Ultra HD player or a 150 quid Ultra HD player around the corner, which it wouldn't surprise me if there was, to be honest. So, yeah, you know, it does nothing wrong. It had some good points. This player, it detected 24p from some of the streaming services and showed it as 24p, which
I'm pretty sure the 5500 did that as well.
Yeah,
I normally test what the signal is, and it was 24.
Yeah, the 4500 didn't do that. So, you know, that's a nice little extra. But yeah, you could I would say, just if you're in desperate need and can't hold on, just go and buy the one down from this. Save yourself half the price, and then buy an Ultra HD player when you need to.
Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, you got to recommend it because it does nothing wrong and it's got some cool features. But yeah,
I mean, a Blu-ray player is a Blu-ray player. As long as it plays the Blu-ray correctly, you know, it can be as small and light and as plasticky as it wants, as long as it's performing its role, which is it's supposed to do. The only real differences you would get are going to be if you decide to go analog stages for your audio, then you're going to go for a more expensive player. But I guess the vast majority of players, for the vast majority of people, it's a one-box solution. As long as you keep the picture set to out of the box, which is normally bang on what's on the disc, it's sent to the TV, then it's really kind of hard to look at a Blu-ray player and say, well, that one's better than this one, because it then comes down to the features involved.
Well, that's it. What apps has it got that you need? You know, it kind of comes down to that almost these days. You know, does it got Wi-Fi? Do I need Wi-Fi? Has it got 3D? Do I need 3D? You know, these are the choices you're making, really, not any performance boosts, as it were.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nothing wrong with this player, but if you don't need a new one, if you don't really need a new one, hang on, see what's around the corner.
Okay, so with Steve being away, normally we take the advantage to be a little bit more music orientated, because we've got Ed on the podcast, and Ed is an authority amongst the four of us anyway. When it comes
He
to
is the music man.
He comes from down our way.
Consistently enough for you to still go off and have a wee like you do with Steve?
Yeah, you need to do that.
No, hey,
48 minutes.
Hey, genuinely interesting what you got to say, Ed. So, what are you going to talk about in a music roundup? No, I'll tell you what we're going to call this: Ed's Music Box.
Oh, bless.
There you go.
Do I get an interesting sound over as well?
I'm working on it. I'll insert it here if there is.
Right. Well, something that actually you and I have Skype discussed, and I've been doing a little bit more reading on, was a fairly bizarre, on the face of it, news story that at the moment, for the vast majority of artists, their revenue from vinyl sales is comfortably higher than what they're actually getting out of YouTube and other sort of online systems, despite there being this talk that it's sort of that, you know, YouTube is able to create viable revenue streams and all the rest of it. It just at the moment isn't happening, and the more that you sort of read up about this, I obviously, as you know, I'm a huge vinyl fan, but this is not so much a celebration of how successful vinyl is. I mean, it's doing perfectly well, but it's still very much a fringe thing. It's just that all of these online playback systems just aren't making anyone any money. And this obviously presents an issue for artists. There's a sort of an element that, you know, whilst we can quite happily look back at some of the practices of record industries in the preceding sort of 25 years and, you know, think, well, you reap what you sow, and there's undoubtedly an element of that. I still don't think it's particularly fair that people should be asked to, you know, put work for free. So where it gets interesting is how artists are responding to this, and you know, the options available to them in terms of, you know, stemming the tide or working with what you've got. And it does divide quite sort of simply into those sort of options. If you are an artist with enormous clout, either someone that's been around for a fairly long time with an older fan base, or if you're Taylor Swift, you can effectively rigorously police both YouTube and the streaming services and keep your music off them and demand that it's listened to through more sort of conventional revenue paying streams. Unfortunately, if you're not Taylor Swift, that's not really an option. You don't have the choice to do that. And it's going on about how the mechanics of how bands are making money have changed quite considerably. Physical media is just one sort of small part of this, and it can't be ever considered to be the mainstay of this, because the number of people depending on physical media, be it vinyl, be it CD, be it paid download, just isn't that high. But using these services as a means of raising awareness of the band's existence and then pushing merchandise, doing a lot more in the way of touring and live performances and festivals and the like, and doing earning revenue via these means, appears to be the 21st century model. The streaming services exist to sort of fulfill the role that commercial radio is slowly sort of dying away from, which is raising awareness in the first place, and then you monetize people's interest in you by doing what streaming services can't be: go and see them, interact with the band, have a great night out. And that appears to be the way forward. But it does mean that for categories which are less about live performances, or there is plenty of live performances, but it's not a case of filling an enormous venue, and items like jazz and things like that, that's much more of a challenge. There's no easy answers for what they can do.
It's interesting. I mean, vinyl making the same amount of money this year compared to 1994.
Yeah.
And vinyl was still available in some quantities back in 1994.
You could buy it in Smith's in 1994.
Yeah, so that's interesting that it's actually bringing in that amount of revenue this year. And yeah, interesting again, you know, you look at YouTube and other places like that where the official videos are shown and so on. They're making pennies off of that.
Yes.
Which is, and like you say, I mean, yeah, it takes a lot to be a pop star or a successful band or whatever, but do people seriously think that they should be working for free? It's entertainment, so it should be free. That certainly seems to be a bigger problem with the younger generations now. Not our generation, but younger generations. There seems to be this almost entitlement.
Yeah,
that
it's
they are
very
entitled
strange. But equally, when you drill down into this, there is a sense that simply listening to it on a computer or phone or something like that, they shouldn't be paying for that. And we can argue the rights and wrongs of that until we're blue in the face. But whilst there are people just consuming free music and contributing nothing to it, by the same token, as I was saying, there are people in these sort of younger points where they do fully accept that it's, you know, they don't want a CD, but they do want a T-shirt. They do want sort of items like that, and they will go out and go to the gig, go to the venue, and see the band live. And it's a different relationship with bands because of that. It does then mean that there's this awkward step up from being, you know, relatively successful to being international is quite a challenge, because you can't as easily interact with people outside of the country that you start up in until people are willing to put some money behind it. And that's it. Getting bands to go international is quite, with this new model, is going to be quite an interesting challenge. It requires people who aren't going to see, labels who aren't going to necessarily see a huge return unless they're, you know, very lucky, having to take a bit of a chance, and that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But you know, equally we can say, you know, I have to say that you know, a lot of this from a record label perspective is entirely self-inflicted. They have, at every turn, their response to the internet has been desperately reactionary. They're always running to catch up, and at no stage has anyone just gone, right, these are the new rules. How do we monetize it? It's like, we don't accept these new rules. You must go back to the old rules, and that just historically has never worked. My
gigging days are probably long gone, Ed. There was a time when I was out most weeks. I don't know about you, Mark. Were you you got many gigs? I mean, you were quite close to Manchester.
No, more nightclubs rather than, like, you know, house nights. I mean, I went to a few, but yeah, I certainly those days are pretty much behind me as far as I know.
Can you remember any of them?
Not many.
But I think you make a good point there, Ed, because all the bands that I've seen live, I then tended to go and almost buy the full catalogue of CD and whatever, because I think there's something about a live performance and connecting with a band that way. I mean, there's been a few, but I think that the one that was most influential over me over a number of years was Manic Street Preachers. You know, when I originally saw them as a four-piece, and then as they progressed through the whole really successful period of winning Brit Awards and all sorts, with very successful period. I think it was the late 90s, wasn't it? Into the millennium.
This Is My Truth, Tell Me Yours, and Everything Must Go. Yeah,
they were the biggest hits. And then carrying on to where we are now, I mean, so I've probably seen them about 7 or 8 times, but you just build up that relationship more with the music than the band, really. And
yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things, it's mainly at the moment something that the Americans have managed to get a handle on. It's beginning to put in an appearance here. Is essentially venues being able to record the band on the night, and you can go back to the band website a couple of days afterwards, and you can buy the recording of when you were there. It's your live album. It's not.
That's clever.
Not one of the generic ones.
Yeah.
And people do seem to be willing to spend out for that. It's, you know, takes you back to the show that you saw at the time you saw it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that, because I handed out a CD single because I was there for the recording on or what would traditionally be known as the B-side, which was a cover of Train in Vain, which was done at the Metro Arena in Newcastle, and I was desperate because that was the only time they ever did that as a cover. and I heard it live, the one, and then trying to find it again, it took a long time. It turned up on a Greatest Hits album eventually, but I actually went out of my way to import it from Japan.
But yeah, I mean, it's a case of making a connection with people, and we ultimately capitalism will out. People who are ambitious and forward thinking and know what their fans are about will find ways of doing quite well out of them. But it'll be a two-way relationship. If they take them for granted, they'll bugger off pretty quickly. So it's going to be different. I mean, I think we're going to see fewer and fewer sort of stadium rock style. Like the number of giant artists will, one, diminish over time as the old guard retire or die, and the replacement number of people that reach true superstardom is just going to be proportionally smaller.
Well, I think you can guarantee that you're never going to see the likes of the Stones or U2 again in terms of how big and how globally successful.
I mean, I think it's important to never say never, but it's yes, the intervals between there being a global sound are going to be longer, and there's going to be fewer people reaching that status at any given time. The good news is that one of the areas where moving away from physical media is actually a benefit. The stumbling blocks to getting your music out there in the first place are reducing all the time. It is now a much easier business to get your recordings into public attention through websites like Bandcamp and the like than it ever used to be. When back when burning CDs was something that was done on a pro level and was heartbreakingly expensive. Getting any level of demo media out there was tremendously expensive and tremendously difficult. And if you pressed 300 or something, and that fundamentally they all went to the 300 wrong people, you've you achieved nothing. Whereas at least with as going back to websites like Bandcamp, and it's not that hard to actually listed on Spotify or other services, at least you've got more chance of being picked up and making it to the next step. Did you all get to go for a wee? Were you all monologued out?
No, I stayed and listened to them.
Stayed and listened to it. We're interested in. Anyway, so I guess we need to wrap up quite quickly because we are surprisingly running out of time. Right, so to wrap up, we're going to quickly look at, because the nights are drawing in, it's getting dark, the new TV series get running. We get new promos coming along, new pilots, and this is the make or break period for a lot of these studios, Mark. A lot of the streaming services as well launching new content. So you've been having a look at the pick of probably what's the best for November and December, and what have you come up with?
Yeah, it struck me actually that I don't watch as much as TV as I did this time last year. I probably would have had 4 or 5 seasons on the go, something, but I've only watching 2 things at the moment, so we'll start there. My current favourite is Fargo, which isn't getting a lot of attention on the forums. It hasn't got one of the biggest discussion threads in the TV shows forum, but I think it's absolutely fantastic. That's available on Channel 4, All 4 and Netflix if you can switch your region to Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland, several others.
Which everyone except me can do.
Yeah, so unless you're Ed, you can probably manage to do that, because it's quite straightforward. Yeah, love that. The other one I'm watching at the minute I'm absolutely hooked on is Bloodline on Netflix, which is it's absolutely gripping. It just got me straight from the off. The storytelling in it is amazing. I just kind of felt at home with the characters and the plot and everything. As soon as I started watching it, I think it's marvelous. So that's recently out on Netflix in 4K. Have you started watching this one, Phil? It's Mr. Robot on Amazon.
No, we discussed this last week when Amazon Prime popped up on the Roku. I haven't started it yet. I watched the trailer. I kind of know what the premise is. It's very contemporary. It's very, very now.
It is very, very now. It's getting absolutely rave reviews as well from forum members as well as professional critics. It's got a cybersecurity engineer by day, vigilante hacker by night. That probably sets the picture enough. I'm going to start watching this because to me it looks well worth it.
Yeah, I'm going to start it next week, I think.
Homeland season 5. Is that on? Do you watch that, Ed? Homeland.
Well, now I keep an eye on it. Kurt, my wife is a big fan of it. I respect the fact it's a really well crafted piece of television. But we've had this conversation before. I watch television for silly. So it's all a bit serious. But nonetheless, it does look jolly good and jolly bleak. So if that's your thing, get stuck in.
Yeah, I say I've just started on season 2 on that one, so I'm playing catch up. But it's fab. It's absolutely brilliant. And this is one I don't do zombies, but a lot of people say I should for this one, which is The Walking Dead. That's a new season just out. Actually, I've let myself down here because I don't know where Walking Dead's available. Is that Amazon and Now TV?
I think it's Now TV.
Yeah, I think it might be on Amazon as well, And then a couple of superhero ones for those that like this sort of thing. Jessica Jones is just out on Netflix. And Supergirl is out on Sky One and Now TV. That seems to be getting quite a lot of attention in the forums. I'm not sure why.
Can I give a suggestion?
Yeah.
Sky One, Now TV, The Muppets, the new Muppets.
Oh yeah, I must do that. Because the kids like the Muppets as well, so that's a perfect excuse.
I feel it's like a punchline. It's a joke where everyone's got the punchline except me. I just can't stand them. I watched about 4 minutes of it.
There's a couple of Muppet movies that I really like. Christmas Carol.
That's great.
I really love that. I think it's brilliant. I'm not really a big Muppets fan, but my best mate is, and mate, you got to see this. It's really funny, and I played the clips, and they were genuinely funny. So I'm going back to watch it from. I think you still get episode 1 of the new run, so I'm going to go and watch them.
Is it geared towards children or is it geared towards adults?
There's definitely an adult theme.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I would pitch it like The Simpsons, like classic Simpsons, where the kiddies would get for the funny interactions, and there's adult humour there.
Good stuff. That sounds perfect. And then just looking ahead into the new year, we'll have Game of Thrones season 6, and I've just learned that Richard E. Grant is joining the cast, which makes me quite happy. I think he'll be absolutely superb in Game of Thrones.
The finest wines.
But yeah, well, he's got to play it like that. He has got to play it like that. That will be just so good. And that's the ones that I've got on my radar. I've
got some suggestions as well.
I thought you would.
Because for the fully stupid end of, for people like me who have suffered a serious brain injury, Sky Living. The 4th season of Elementary kicks off next week, 19th. Oh no, this week, 19th.
Is that's not on Now TV, is it?
I don't know.
I'm
afraid. But it's the Johnny Lee Miller take on Sherlock, and it's much more of a crime procedural. But in some ways, and I know this is something that appears to be heresy to say if you're British, but in some ways it's comfortably superior to what the BBC is doing. It's a much more interesting Sherlock Holmes, let's put it like that. So that's normally quite good, and it's rare in this day and age in so much as it has season arcing plot things, but it also is quite episodic, which I find to be quite satisfying in this day and age. And then, just in case that's a bit highbrow for you, at some point in December, season 6 of Hawaii Five-0 kicks off. Now, for my sins, I've watched every single episode from the first episode of season 1, and at no stage have I ever needed to apply any level of thought to it. But it's pretty, and it's noisy, and it's stupid, and it's escapist, and it's fun. So I don't feel I need to be. I don't need to justify myself. If you're with me on this one, it's great. If not, there's lots of serious things and bleak things for you to watch, and leave this one for me.
Of course, working from home, being able to switch TV on during the day and look at daytime TV, I've got to say that the best TV series of all time is still Homes Under the Hammer.
Well, no, there's a lot to be said for that. Although, Phil, in daytime TV terms, I know it initially broadcasts in the evening, but it's more when it returns later on for daytime viewing. There's another season of Air Crash Investigation. And let's face it, there's no shortage of plane crashes.
Yeah, well, there is that. There's a whole, at least another 2 seasons worth from the last. But the thing with Homes Under the Hammer, it was something that Dave Gorman did a while back on his
music thing.
With the thing with the music editor, and it's great because you sit there and you wait for the line and then you think, what song is it going to be? And 9 times out of 10 you get it wrong because it's some really random song that they use for the setup. It's not the obvious one that you think it's going to be. And again, you know, when you did the whole people walking into rooms, it's something that I'd never ever picked up on watching it because of the music and the voiceover and everything else. You just let it wash over you. But actually, when you take the music away, you just press mute and then watch what they're actually doing. And it's just people walking into a room and they stop and they look up and they look around and then they walk back out the room again.
Well,
and it's literally 40 minutes of the same thing.
On that sort of note, did you see that there was at some point there was a discussion of James Bond where Mark Gatiss was involved, and he has this thing. He, under no circumstances normally is A View to a Kill a great film, but if you watch it in the mind that it's about a confused old man who thinks he's a secret agent, apparently it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I'm going to have to go and watch that now. And on that bombshell, that's all we get time for this week on the podcast. My thanks to Mark Hodgkinson.
I've lost my quote page. It won't load.
That's a great quote.
Fantastic quote. And Ed Selly.
No, sir, I didn't see you playing with your dolls again.
And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums.com for latest reviews, news and video. And of course, you can leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes and we'll read your name out on the show in the future. I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening and we'll see you again next Wednesday.